Hello, welcome to the channel and thanks for watching. Now this is going to be a fairly short video for what I think is actually a fairly impactful and interesting little kit bash. We're taking the servo turret, we're taking some armature legs and we're mashing them together to make a mobile kind of Space Marine heavy walker, which I'll use in game just basically as a servo turret. This is more a kit bash to look interesting, look cool, because the rule of cool is sometimes the best way of doing it. So obviously this is not really a difficult kit bash, but because I'm showing you my army progress, we are going to show it on the channel and I'll talk about some of the little things as we're going. So really, two stages of kit bash. First stage is you build the top part, so you're building the servo turret, shield, gun, and the Space Marine that's on there. The only part you're not building is the support this would ordinarily mount on. So simple first step. Now, before everyone sort of says, oh, you know, how did you come up with this idea? I have seen this somewhere before and I'd love to credit where I've seen it, but I cannot remember. Sent it to my mates as well and they said, oh, I've never seen that. So I don't know what depth of Instagram or wherever I saw it, but whoever the initial idea was, it's a great one and just for a real simple conversion piece. So I've made the turrets there, the two top parts, and then you just create the legs in the same fashion. The only difference is we're not going to use the armor that goes on the thigh and goes on the shin, because that makes it look a bit too kind of armature and knight version. So I'm just using the armor that goes between the legs to give enough, and then that's it. You've done all the building. This is the only part that is actually kit bashing. You're cutting the pin off that goes on the bottom of the servo turret that goes normally in the kind of mounting work that goes on the floor, and you're slicing a tiny amount off the top of the ball joint on the armature legs. Slice bits off, test fit it, see what I'm seeing here, so that it doesn't stand too proud basically. When you've done that, you glue it together. Simple. Kit bash done. So we could finish the video there, but I'm going to talk about a few other little pieces. So it's a really impactful kit bash. Does it change the rules? No, it's not going to. I'm going to use it really as a servo turret, so it is just rule of cool to fit in with my current army that's kind of a Death World kind of vibe about where they're going to fight. So really a very immobile static artillery type piece wasn't going to work, so I thought, you know, mobile like this. I'm going to talk about a couple of concepts about when you're doing the army. The next stage of what I'm doing with this current Marine army is to take liquid green stuff, stipple it all over the armor panels. Now that's a technique that comes from traditional kind of miniature building for tanks and things to make the armor look a bit more cast. I'm doing it just to really give a bit of visual difference to the army, and experimenting with different techniques and different styles as you're moving through your hobby journey is a good way of keeping yourself motivated, and that's particularly why I've done it on this. It's not a technique I'm going to probably use for quite a while. You might not see it on the channel for ages, and I might pop back to it for something else. Now all I'm doing here is taking some milliput, 2-part epoxy putty you can mix up, and filling the holes that are in the base. I don't quite know what, well, the holes there imagine, because of this is where the mounting feet would go for the servo turret legs, so obviously we don't need those here. So I'm just putting them on in different patterns to make the ground a bit more sort of undulating and interesting. We're filling those holes. Now here's another concept about when we're wargaming, not wasting things as we're going. So what I'm doing here is I'm making up some little milliput balls for a future project. If you've watched it a lot, you know I do that a lot for my Death Guard and Nurgle, so there is some more Nurgle coming. You'll see a little blue stuff mould there that I've taken the excess milliput and filled that mould, because again that's for a future project. So when you're doing your projects, try and think about not wasting things and thinking about what you're doing in the future. Now I'm just working on the base now. I've got a basing video that I've shown how I do the river style bases for these models. Again, I'll try to put enough effort into my bases so they look like you've put some effort in there. Not putting any effort onto your base really can let the model down. I'm not making them super complicated or super difficult. Sometimes I like to, but generally I want to put enough effort that it matches the kind of effort level you've put in the models, because you spend a lot of time on the model. Take a bit of effort in the base. Another tip is when you're using the PVA glue there, you can see, started for a small brush, I went, this is futile, got a big brush. So use the appropriate equipment for the appropriate model. One of the best tips you can do. So bigger brush, bigger base, move back to the small brush when you need to get in under the feet, etc. Another thing you'll notice, I'm using neat PVA glue. It is much faster to base with watered down PVA, but you get a lot less adherence with that. It'll take a lot more time to dry with neat PVA glue. In the long run it's better, because if you don't prep the base properly with the right thickness of glue, you know, 6 months time, a year's time, you can find that your basing material will start peeling off the base, and you certainly don't want that if it's an army that you want to stick around. Now, although I do sell a lot of my armies on eBay when I get bored with them or when I finish the project, this isn't an army I'm going to sell because it's a little bit weird. So this one's going to stay in the collection probably for years. So I want to make sure it's got a long longevity, which I do anyway. So as the sprayed part, I spray it in lead belch before I start painting the model, and you can see the detail there on the armour panel, so it's quite nice. So I'm not going to go through the colour scheme because that's been shown on the channel again, so check the links and you can see why I paint that. But this again is another example of trying something new. So I started painting the first few layers, just holding the base of the model. When I paint a normal model, I use a painting handle. So I went out and picked up one of the large Games Workshop ones. I might do a review on that on the channel later. So different projects, try different things, experiment, try new stuff to really see what you like and see what works, whether that's a new piece of equipment, a new way of doing it, and I think that livens up the hobby. So here's the completed models. So I've got them in the unpainted on the right to the painted version on the left, and I think it's just a real simple, nice kit bash, loads of impact for actually very, very little effort. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you back on the channel for another video.